Hey guys, what's happening? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around, we're going to take this patch from the Ultra Nova and we're going to sample that into Beatmaker 3 as a multi-sampled playable patch. Stick around, let's check it out.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Okay guys, so why might you want to sample an Ultra Nova patch into Beatmaker 3 if you've got an Ultra Nova sitting here? Well, maybe you like to use, Beatmaker on the bus or Beatmaker on your lunch break, and you don't necessarily want to take your Ultra Nova with you on the bus or on your lunch break. Or maybe you don't want to take it to the gig and you want to take your iPad. If you've been watching my recent live jam videos, you might have seen that I'm using my iPad Mini 2 as a live melodic, keys instrument. And when I'm using the Ultra Nova in my live jams, there's a few patches that I, use kind of as go-to patches in my jams. One of them is called Pin Code. Just kind of seems to cut through, whatever jam I'm playing it, in. And so I figure we'll take that patch and we'll go ahead and multi-sample this into Beatmaker 3 so that I can then use this in addition to the other, melodic patches that I'm using in my live jams in Beatmaker 3. So I've got the iPad Air 2 running with an Novation Audio Hub 2x4 to get super clean audio out of the iPad and into the iPad. I've taken the output from the Ultra Nova directly into the front here on the audio hub, and I've clicked the button where it says gain low high. I've clicked that onto high setting so we get the most amount of gain into Beatmaker 3 as possible. We're going to go ahead and just select the first pad here. We'll open up the sampler window and we'll click record. And you can see we're getting, level into, Beatmaker 3 right, on the side here. Now, when we're multi-sampling stuff, you can, record every single key if you want to get the highest, playback quality as possible. But that's certainly going to take up a lot of storage on your iPad. Now, if this sound is like your, most important favorite sound that you play, maybe you do want to sample every single note along the way. This is just a pretty standard patch, and what we're going to do, you'll hear that it has quite a bit of delay on it. We're going to go ahead and turn that off because we can assign some delay to this sound once we get it into Beatmaker 3. So we're just going to go ahead and go to the effects page, and I'll see that, let's see here. We've got delay on slot 3, so we'll just turn the delay set down. We'll leave a little bit of that reverb on there because that's kind of a nice sound, and reverb is a more CPU hungry effect inside of Beatmaker 3 or any DAW for that matter. So if we can bake some reverb into the sampling of the sound, that's just going to save us a little bit of CPU in the long run. Looks like we're pretty good on level here inside of Beatmaker 3. What I like to do as just a basic multi-sample is to sample every third note. So if you start with a C and then you count 1, 2, 3, you're going to sample this D sharp, and then 1, 2, 3, you're going to sample this F sharp, and then 1, 2, 3, you're going to sample this A, and then 1, 2, 3, you're back to C again. And so that's going to give you 4 notes in every octave that you sample. It's a pretty good amount of notes to, to play back the sound inside of Beatmaker 3 and still have it sound good. What we'll do to record this, guys, is I'm just going to go ahead and hit start, and then I'm going to go up the keyboard every third note, and we're going to record all the way from this C all the way up to this C. And then we'll edit that out, and we'll map these samples to the appropriate keys inside of Beatmaker 3, maybe assign some macros, and do some serious programming on this. Okay, so I'll hit start on Beatmaker 3 and play in these notes. I'm going to note that it's kind of important that you try to hit all the notes at the same velocity and hold them for the same amount of time so that, they're going to play back even once you get them inside of Beatmaker 3. So if I hold down the note just for a long time, that's a pretty long note. But I think what I'm going to do is just, just give a short, maybe like 16th note equivalent of a tap. And here we'll go up the keyboard with that. One, two, three. One, two, three. One, two, three. It's important to let the note ring out before you do the next one. Okay, cool. So now if I press where it says recording, it should have processed that, and in fact it did. And we can see if we go into the the edit screen, and now we're playing back through the audio hub. Those are all of the notes that I just recorded, guys. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to change the camera, and we're going to start editing these out. We're going to trim these out, and we're going to map these across the pads, guys, and start making a playable instrument here. All right, let's do this. Oh, hey, one more thing, guys, before we change camera angle here and start doing the editing. I'm going to be thinking of this keyboard as I'm mapping this in the, in the fact that my brain conceives this C here as C2, and as you go up the keyboard, and you get up to the higher notes, I'm considering this as a C5. So as we're mapping this, I'll be mapping our lowest note to a C2 all the way up, and I'll be mapping our highest note to a C5. Cool. Okay, guys, before we actually start chopping this up, this can be a pretty technical process, and sometimes it's good to just sort of map out what your intentions are. If you count it up here, what we've got is we've got 13 individual samples, okay? So what we know is we know that the first sample is a C2, and we know that the last sample is a C5, and we know that we sampled every 3 notes in between there. So let's just sketch this out, right? We've got 13 notes, so let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and we know that this is a C2, and we know that note 13 is a C5, okay? And we know that we went, let's see if we can... Perfect. Okay, so we know that we went, 3 notes in between sampling. So if we started on a C, we can go 1, 2, 3, and we know that our next note was a D sharp 2, and then from there we went another 3. So we go 1, 2, 3, and we know that our next note is an F sharp 2. Okay, and then from there we went 3 again, 1, 2, 3. So we know that our next note is A2. Okay, 3 from A2, 1, 2, 3 is back to C. Okay, so that's the C3, and we can just sort of repeat that. This is not going to be D sharp 3. This is going to be F sharp 3. This is going to be the A3. Our 9th note is going to be C4, and D sharp 4, and F sharp 2. Excuse me, 4 rather. See, that's why it's really important to get this right, guys, because if you mislabel something or if you map something, then your patches are going to be, melodically out of tune, and you don't want that, especially since you're going to take the time, to go ahead and program out a patch. You definitely want to take the time to get it right. So F sharp, and then this is going to be A4. Okay, so now we know that at any point here, when we're trimming these out or editing, we can count in and sort of have a reference point and know exactly what note we're on, and exactly what we're editing, when we're editing it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and trim these out, and we're going to save each sample individually, and we'll label each sample with the root note of that sample in the name as well. So basically we're just going to start doing some trimming. It's really all about the details at this point, guys. You don't want to mislabel one of these samples and then end up having your patch out of tune. What we're going to do now is we'll just start trimming out these samples, and we have a point of reference as to what note each of these samples is here. So we'll just start trimming these out, and we'll zoom in to the very beginning. Do a trim. Hold the minus and we'll zoom out all the way. Now it's important to note that when you're playing these back, when you want to edit this out, you want to make sure you let the reverb that we baked into the sound have enough time to play out. So you basically just sort of want to use your ears and use your gut. That sounds pretty good. And we'll go into select mode. We'll grab just the end of the sample here and do a fade out. Whoops. That's just sort of just an extra housekeeping step that I do. Main sample directory, and this is, let's just keep it all lowercase. This is pin code. Whoops. And we know that, it's our first note, so by default, it's just, let's capitalize that. It's a C2. Okay, great. Now we'll just continue dragging our main sample back onto the pad, and we'll just edit the rest of these notes out. So we know that this is number 2. And we'll zoom in all the way at the beginning there. We'll get right up on the start point of the sample. Okay. Just right there. Perfect. Zoom out all the way, and we'll play that and listen to when the reverb is kind of stopping. I think we could probably go right about there and do a trim. And we'll go into select, we'll go into select mode. We'll grab the end again and just do a little bit of a fade out. Just on the very last little bit. You don't want to select like a whole bunch. Now you're fading out all of that reverb that we baked into the sample. You just want to get a tiny little bit at the end. And this is just a good practice to keep everything in line all the time. You know what I'm saying? Fantastic. And that's our second note, so that's going to be our D sharp 2. Okay, now we'll drag that sample back to the pad again, the original sample. Pin code multi. Okay, now we're just going to repeat this for all 13 samples. Hey guys, what's up? I hope you're enjoying watching my videos. If you find value in my content, I'd like to suggest you become a patron over at patreon.com. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, or you can help support this channel by buying some of my sample packs. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you stay tuned for more Beatmaker 3 shenanigans. Okay, guys, so I've trimmed out all 13 of the sounds, of the samples of the, multi-sample here. So we should verify that we have 13 samples on, the inside. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, fantastic. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drag all these in. We're going to go ahead and start mapping these. Okay, so let's go back to our browser, and here's our 13 samples. We're going to clear that pad, and let's see here. We'll just start dragging these on, and we're going to change over here from replace sample to add to existing layer. A3, A4, C. I was having trouble with the edit and select all, so I'm not sure if that's a me problem or if that's a Beatmaker 3 problem. But here we've got on layer 1, all 13 of our samples. And let's see here. If we go over to the mapping page, And we can see here that, if I select a sample, currently every sample is selected to go across the entire key range. And what we want is basically our samples to go just those 3 notes until the next note, right? So we're going to start with the very first one, which is, we'll find that in the list. It's our C2, right? And then here's our, mapping over here. Well, we'll start with the root key. And we know that, if I touch this, I can, move, that's moving down here at the bottom. And also it's, visually changing here. So like this is our low key is going to be all the way. Okay. So, we'll grab the highest that this key is going to go, okay, is to our very next note. Our very next note is that we sampled, is a D sharp 2. So, let's see here. If we set this to D sharp 2, that's going to overlap the next note. So just go 1 down, right? So that's going to go from C2, so it'll play the C sharp, it'll play on the D, and then the next note is going to be our D sharp 2, right? And our root key is D sharp 2. This is really important that you set the root key and not just like the mapping, but the root key, so that it keeps everything in tune. And so the lowest key here is the low key is always going to be our root note. We're doing this in like the most straightforward way. And then it's really that high key, so this D2, we're going to go to 1 lower than that F sharp 2. So we'll go to F2. Okay, and then our next one is going to be F sharp 2, so I'll grab that. We'll set the root key, always set the root key, first, F sharp 2, come on, okay, and then we'll make the low key that same as the root key, okay, and then the high key, we're not going to go to A2 because that'll be overlapping, so we'll go 1 beneath that. We'll go down to G sharp 2. Okay, whoop, G sharp 2, come on, okay. And then our next one's going to be that A2. And now my phone's going off. But we're going to keep going, just ignore that. So we'll set the root key to A2. Okay, we'll set the low key to the same as the root key, A2. Okay, and we'll adjust that high key 1 beneath the C3. So there's C3. We just go back 1 beneath that to the B2. Okay, you guys get the gist of what I'm doing here, right? C3. The root key's already set there. We'll take the low key. We'll match the root key. Okay, and then we'll just bring this high key down. And we know that, it's a C3, so we want to go 1 beneath the D sharp 3. You don't have to sketch it out like this, guys. It's just, super easy, to keep it straightforward, and also, for the visual reference of the tutorial and all. So now our next would be D sharp 3. Again, we'll make the root key D sharp 3. We'll make the low key the same as the root key, D sharp 3. Just bring this down. This is going to be an F3. Okay. Get an F sharp 3. Okay, guys. So we'll just go ahead and just double check here. I'll just do a visual that I've adjusted all the notes correctly. I'll, check these root keys and the low keys and whatnot. It's looking good. See, we have a problem there. We'll change that one. C3. Whoops, hold on. Looks like I didn't get that note right at all. It's the D sharp 4. This is why we double check, you know what I'm saying? D sharp 4 should go to the F sharp 4. F4 rather. There's an error in here somewhere. Come on. Okay, there we go. So at the end, when everything is mapped properly, it should look really smooth and there should be no weird looking lines. That looks pretty good. So if we turn this to keys mode and just, right off the jump, we know that we started on a C2. All right, good deal. And there we sampled on a D5. Now you heard, as we go up, some of the volumes are going to need to be, smoothed out a little bit. Also, we're going to put some delay from Beatmaker 3 back on the sound. And we'll, assign some cool macros so that you can adjust the sound while it's being played in real time. Cool. Let's get started. I've got the Launch Key Mini out. I figured this will be pretty good to use with, assigning some macros to this patch. So the first thing we'll do is assign the knobs on the Launch Key Mini to the macros in Beatmaker 3. We'll click the browser and the gear icon, and we'll scroll down a bit until we get to the macro controls. I'll tap macro control 1. Now I've connected the Launch Key Mini to the Novation audio hub, so that's how it's talking to Beatmaker 3. So I've got macro control 1 clicked, and it's waiting for me to turn a knob here, which we'll do. Okay, macro control 2, I'll turn the second knob, and we'll just repeat this until we have all 8 macros assigned. Okay, cool. Now, what we'll notice right off the jump is that some of these sounds, are a little tiny length different than some of the other sounds. This is a really organic thing that we did by hand. If we were to have, taken the time and assigned like a MIDI sequencer to play an exact 16th note at 97, velocity for every note, then these would be a little bit more even sounding. One of the things that will help though with this right off the jump is to put a little bit of delay back on this sound, like the factory preset in the Ultra Nova had. So we'll click the effects tab here. We'll add an effect. And actually, let's start by putting an EQ on here. Cool. Let's just set that at the beginning of the effects chain in case we want to do something with that later. You'll see I loaded up a default preset that I have, and it's just it's not really affecting anything except that we're shaving off some any sub low frequencies below like 28 hertz. You wouldn't really hear those anyway, but that's just sort of a default setting. It's not really affecting the sound yet until we go in and start adjusting that per se. But rather, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. We want a stereo delay rather than just a delay. So let's delete that effect. Cool. I like to turn the high pass filter cutoff on this up to about 600, and what that's going to do is that's going to keep any frequencies below 600 from feeding into this delay. So what that will, like for instance, you don't want to necessarily put delay on a kick drum or delay on a bass, because then you're delaying these super low frequencies that are going to build up, layers of, mud in your mix per se. So by not sending any low frequencies to our delay, you're helping keep the sound clean and sort of, those delays to float over the mix rather than muddy up the mix. I'll maybe turn the high pass filter, the low pass filter down just, a little bit as well. I'll bring up the feedback on these. In fact, this might be a good time to start assigning things to some macros. So we'll go back to our sampler page. There's a few go-tos on programming patches that I like to use that I find are, pretty handy for playing stuff live. First of which is the attack. So we'll double click this and we're going to assign this to a macro. So we're going to choose macro controls and we are going to click macro 1. And we'll bring up the macro knobs, which, here are, oh, it's already working. Fantastic. So we're going to, go to our knobs page. We're going to click the 3 dots to adjust this. And we can make it so, it doesn't necessarily go up all the way when we turn that knob. Let's find out. What we'll do is, we'll play and we'll adjust this and we'll find out where it sounds good and we'll adjust to that. So you can see as I go up, it's a really short sound. So as I, bring that attack up, we can, end up going so far that we, go delete, our attack is going past the entire audible range of the sound. Does that make sense? So we want to make our maximum not quite as high. Okay, even less still. And this is just personal preference, guys. I mean, you don't have to assign the macros, but if you want a robust patch that you can play live and do some fun stuff with in real time, which is, what we're building here, this is definitely the way to go about it. So you can see the power in these macros, especially for like something live, because here we've got, this really glassy, punchy lead synth with like a transient on it. And as I bring that attack up, it's more of like an, more appropriate for like ambient jams and down-tempo stuff. Cool. Let's see here. So let's do, okay, so we've used macro 1. I would like to see if we can't use all 8 knobs with the sound, assign macros 1 through 8. Typically, I like to assign the volume of a sound to macro 8. So we'll double click the gain here and we'll choose macro controls and I'll choose macro 8 and that puts the gain there on macro 8. And as I turn the knob, you can see we go from 0 all the way to 12 decibels, and that's pretty outrageous. We want to take our maximum back down to like, 0 decibels. There we go. Cool. But now, now as you're playing, you've got full control over the volume of the sound, which is cool. At this point, I would say we can go ahead and save this patch. So we'll click the 3 dots next to where it says bank A1, right? And we'll click save bank. We'll give this bank a name. This is the pin code. Okay. And I'm not going to copy the samples or anything like that just yet, but I am going to just save so that, we could, if you don't feel like, continuing, you could, exit Beatmaker 3 at this point and come back to it later. It's also good to just, have it saved so that at any time now, you can click that, save the bank, not even rename it or anything, just click save and overwrite that so that, you're not going to lose any work in case of a crash or something. So now that we've got some macros going, we might want to start assigning like some other stuff here, right? So the dry wet mix is a great, on the delay, is a great thing to assign to a macro. So let's assign that to say, macro 2. There really is no, right way or wrong way to go about this. It depends on, if you're programming a sound, it depends on what you're going to want to do with that sound and maybe some of the things that, you like inside of Beatmaker 3 to be easily accessible on these macros. Super handy stuff. I definitely don't want the delay to disappear when you turn the macro down. I want there always to be some delay on the sound, so maybe we'll make our minimum 20% dry wet. Maybe 15. Maybe 10. I'll make our maximum like 90 or something. So we have a really, wide range of what we can do with the delay here. No, we're going to make that max 100. That's too cool. All right, cool deal. And let's see here. What else could we do? We could assign a low pass filter here. And maybe bring the resonance down just a touch, and assign the cutoff of this filter to a macro. We could use macro 3 for this. So we'll just double tap on that, and where it says macro controls, we'll choose macro 3, and then we can click these, and then we can adjust the range of what that filter is going to do. And it's even represented in hertz here. So you're not going to want to probably filter it all the way down. Let's start with something, excuse me, maybe around 500. And see what that sounds like. Let's see, it says on macro 3. So, I like it when I filter the sound down that I can still hear the sound in the mix. You might prefer that that's not the case, and you might set this minimum, further down. Depends on how much, range you want in the end when you move this knob, One of the things that I like to do also, though, is I like to keep the knobs in, if I can, some sort of a uniform. Well, I was going to say maybe we could reverse this so that it matches when you turn it off, instead of having to leave this knob at, because see how these are down at their default position, and now the cutoff is up at its default position, as well as the gain. That's just sort of the way it's going to be for this patch, I suppose. We'll start giving some colors to these. Again, there's no really rhyme or reason for this. It's just to help it look different, and maybe help your brain decipher what you're actually doing inside the patch. We'll go ahead and do a save again, since we've done some changes there. Okay, let's see here. Give me a second, and I'll figure out some other stuff we can maybe modulate here. I like to modulate this fine-tuning sometimes with an LFO to get a really subtle pitch bend effect. So let's see if we can't do that with this patch. We'll double-click this, and we're going to modulate this with an LFO, right? We don't have any LFOs in this patch yet, so we'll choose a new LFO. And then if we go to our modulations page, here is this LFO that we just set up. And if we click on the LFO, now we can actually start assigning this. And if we sync it to say eighth notes. And let's see here. Here's our amount of this. Let's say we want to bring 100% active. Yeah, see, now it's really waving back and forth. And it's starting to sound, really wobbly. Okay, so let's bring that down to maybe... What? Why is this not moving? Come on, buddy. Okay, cool. Now what we want to do is we want this to be something that you can, fade in and out with the macro. So what we're going to do is double click on the amount knob over here and assign this to a macro. And so macro 4, I'm going to rename this one because it's kind of specific what it is that it's doing. This one is creating our pitch wobble, and we are going to set the minimum of this to 0 and the maximum to 100, and that way you can have no pitch wobble at all, or you can have some pitch wobble. So say, as you're programming, using this patch maybe in a track or whatnot, and you get to, the wonky solo part of the track or whatever, you might, automate the pitch wobble to come up, or, use that, accordingly. Say if you're maybe making some chill out, Boards of Canada style stuff, and you want that sort of a pitch wobble, tape, wobble effect, you might crank up the dry wet mix, we might crank up the attack, might bring that, cut off down to halfway, and then turn that pitch wobble up just a little. That's pretty nice. It is a little bit low sounding, level-wise. So I think what we'll do is on the volume here, we'll go back to that macro, the gain macro, and we're going to go ahead and tell this, That was odd how I had it mapped 4 times there. We'll try that again. So we'll go macro 8. And what I want to do is just tell the gain to be a little bit higher than 1 dB at its full position. So we get a little bit more volume out of this sound. Fuck. Cool. Let's bring these down. I don't know why I'm doing that up there when I could be doing it with the knobs. Cool. So we'll save there. Bring that back to 90 and leave a little bit of play. Save. So we've still got 3 spots for macros available. Let's throw on some reverb to this patch. There's an inverb, which is pretty nice here. Oh yeah. Let's assign this dry wet mix to a macro. How about macro 5? Cool. And let's say again, we don't want it to never have reverb on it. Maybe just less reverb than when it's maxed out. But maybe we want to add a little bit of reverb to it. Yeah, it's pretty nice. So let's go back into the effects tab and adjust that reverb, right? To make the room size a little bigger, not 100 bigger, but maybe like 80. Let's try that. Okay, let's see if we go back to the macros. We'll turn the attack all the way up, turn the delay up. Yeah, we can really get some neat stuff happening here. So this is really our reverb dry wet. So let's call this reverb. Give that a cool color. Cool, man. All right. Let's see, we've got 2 macros left. How about saturation? Let's turn that to a macro 7. And let's give it, maybe like 1% as the default. Just too little, maybe like 15 here. And how about we put just to keep it also a little bit, the audio levels a little bit even. Let's put just a really gentle compressor on this mix. So let's put it before the effects come in. So we're going to go move up. Back to the dynamics. We're going to click the dots. We're going to go move up. Okay, now let's put it before the EQ. Click the dynamics and go move up. I like to use a ratio of 4:1 a lot of the time. This is, I think, a pretty good instance for that. We'll turn the attack up just a little bit, and that'll let the transient of the sound punch through a little more. And we'll just bring this threshold down now. Maybe bring that makeup gain up like 1. There we go. Okay, just so that it's just barely, every now and again, doing a little something there. Fantastic. Let's put some less reverb on here. Cool. Let's see, we've got one macro left here. Let me think about what we can put on that. Might be neat if we drop like a chorus effect on this sound and maybe put that last macro to turn it on and off. I'll scroll down here and do add an effect. And let's choose, believe that's, what is that, modulation delay? Yeah, mode, flanger, mode. Ooh, vibrato might be cool too, though. Oh, absolutely. Let's leave this depth at 0 and double click that, right? We'll choose macro. We'll choose the last available macro in our first 8. And let's see here. Yeah, maybe put the maximum amount of vibrato to like, 70 or something. We'll rename that vibrato instead of depth. There we go. And we'll give like a different color there. And maybe that's a little bit much at the max. Maybe we'll put the max more like 50. And also, it says amount here, but we assigned that to saturation. So we'll rename that to saturation. Good deal. So, I mean, this should pretty much make sense to you. Like, if you're loading this patch up, let's say a year from now, you should be able to load this up, grab your macros, and go. So make sure that you're labeling stuff, appropriately along the way, guys. Okay, guys, I hope this has been informative for you and maybe encourage you to start setting up some patches of your own or sample your hardware, maybe sample a synth that your friends got. Anyhow, thank you very much for watching and be sure and stay tuned for more Beatmaker 3 shenanigans.